Daniel couldn't believe what was happening. Just 3 days ago, he was trapped in a cycle of doubt and frustration, but now everything felt different. His mind was clearer, his body lighter, and his confidence stronger. He had spent years trying to figure out why success always seemed out of reach, but now he realized he had been looking in the wrong places. It all started on the first night. The mentor, an older man named James, didn't waste any time. He asked Daniel one simple question: what do you really want? Not what society told him to want, not what his family expected, just his pure, unfiltered desire. Daniel hesitated. He had never really thought about it this way. He had dreams, sure, but he never fully claimed them as his own. "I want freedom," he finally said. "Freedom to live on my own terms, to do what excites me, to wake up every day feeling alive." James nodded and gave him his first task. "For the next 24 hours, you are going to think, breathe, and act as if you already have that freedom. No doubts, no second-guessing. Just step into that version of yourself." It sounded too easy, almost ridiculous, but Daniel had already tried everything else. What did he have to lose? That night, something shifted. He sat alone in his small apartment, but instead of feeling trapped, he imagined he was in his dream home. Instead of worrying about money, he pictured himself having more than enough. He spoke, walked, and even ate like a man who had already made it. It felt strange at first, but then something unexpected happened. He felt lighter, almost as if his problems weren't as big as they used to be. By the second day, Daniel noticed small changes. People treated him differently, conversations flowed effortlessly, and for the first time in a long while, he felt in control. But then, doubt crept back in. Is this real? Or am I just playing pretend? The moment he let those thoughts in, everything seemed to slow down again. That's when James called him. "You're slipping back," James said. "Your old self is fighting to take control. You have to push through." Daniel sighed. "But how? I don't feel like that person all the time." James paused before answering. "Because you're still letting your past define you. You need to cut ties with the version of you that believes success is hard, that you're not enough, that you have to struggle. That version is dead now. The sooner you accept that, the faster your life will change." Something about those words hit Daniel deeply. He had spent years carrying the weight of his failures, always thinking that success was just out of reach. But what if it wasn't? What if it was already his, and all he had to do was claim it? That night, Daniel did something he had never done before. He wrote down every belief that had ever held him back. "I'm not smart enough. I don't have the right connections. I always fail." Line after line, he poured out his fears. Then he took the paper and burned it. As the ashes floated away, he felt something inside him break free. By the morning of the third day, everything felt different. He didn't have to try to act confident. It just happened naturally. Opportunities seemed to come out of nowhere. People who once ignored him now paid attention. Even his voice sounded different, stronger. But just as he was getting comfortable in this new reality, a challenge appeared. A phone call. A job opportunity he had been dreaming of for years suddenly landed in his lap. But there was a catch. He had to prove himself in a way he never had before. Doubt tried to creep back in, but this time he didn't let it win. He took a deep breath, reminded himself who he was now, and said yes. As he stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at the man he had become, he realized the truth. The transformation wasn't about luck, talent, or even hard work. It was about stepping into the version of himself that had always been there, just waiting to be unleashed. But the journey wasn't over yet. The real test was just beginning. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. His mind raced with excitement, fear, and the weight of what was ahead. The job opportunity was exactly what he had been waiting for, but now that it was here, a familiar feeling crept in, the fear of messing it all up. He had spent 3 days transforming his mindset, stepping into a new version of himself, but was it really enough? Could he truly leave behind years of doubt in just 3 days? The next morning, he sat at his desk, staring at the email from the company. They wanted him to present an idea, something bold, something that could prove he was the right fit. He had 24 hours. His hands hovered over the keyboard, but nothing came. His mind, so clear just yesterday, was suddenly clouded with self-doubt. What if I fail? What if they see through me? He grabbed his phone and called James. The mentor listened patiently, then said, "Daniel, you're making the same mistake again. You're waiting to feel ready. But the truth is, you already are. You just have to act before your old self talks you out of it." Daniel knew James was right. He had spent years waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right feeling. But maybe there was no right time. Maybe the people who succeeded weren't the smartest or the luckiest. Maybe they were just the ones who took action before fear stopped them. With that thought, he forced himself to type. The words didn't come perfectly at first, but he kept going. He wrote down everything that came to his mind, his experiences, his ideas, the lessons he had learned in just 3 days. And slowly, something started to take shape. An idea. One that wasn't just impressive but felt true to him. When the presentation day arrived, Daniel walked into the office with a confidence he barely recognized. The old him would have been nervous, second-guessing everything, but this time was different. He reminded himself of the simple truth he had learned. If he saw himself as worthy, others would too. The room was silent as he spoke. He could see the faces of the executives, their expressions unreadable, but he didn't let that shake him. He focused on delivering his message, on believing in himself as much as James believed in him. And then it was over. The moment of truth. They exchanged glances, then one of them leaned forward. "This is interesting," he said, nodding slightly. "You're not what we expected, but that's not a bad thing." Daniel held his breath. Was that good? Bad? He couldn't tell. "Give us a day," the executive continued. "We'll be in touch." Walking out of that room, Daniel felt something strange. Not fear, not doubt, but Daniel stayed at his phone, his old boss's words still echoing in his mind. A raise, a promotion, security. It was everything he thought he had wanted. For a moment, doubt crept in again. Was he really ready to walk away from stability for something uncertain? What if the new job didn't work out? What if he had been fooling himself this whole time? He gripped the phone tighter, his pulse quickening. This was the moment that would define everything. He had spent the last 3 days transforming his mindset, stepping into his power, believing that anything he desired was possible. But now, faced with the choice, his old fears clawed at him, trying to pull him back. His mind raced with questions, and then, almost instinctively, he called James. "I don't know what to do," Daniel admitted. "What if I'm making a mistake?" James sighed, his voice steady. "Daniel, listen to me. Right now, you're standing at the edge of everything you've ever wanted. But the closer you get, the louder fear becomes. That's how it works. Fear will try to convince you to turn around, to go back to what's comfortable. But tell me, does comfort ever lead to greatness?" Daniel closed his eyes. He knew the answer. He had spent years choosing comfort, and where had that gotten him? Nowhere. James continued, "I want you to imagine your life 5 years from now. One version of you takes the safe path. He stays where it's comfortable, afraid to take risks. What does his life look like?" Daniel could see it so clearly, waking up every morning, dragging himself to the same job, feeling unfulfilled, wondering what could have been. That version of him felt small, stuck, full of regret. "Now imagine the other version of you," James said, "the one who takes the leap, who trusts himself, who walks into the unknown knowing he's capable. What does his life look like?" Daniel saw it, the freedom, the excitement, the success. He didn't know exactly how it would happen, but he knew it was real. It was waiting for him, if he had the courage to step forward. His heart pounded as he took a deep breath. He pulled up the number for his old boss, his finger hovering over the call button. Then, without hesitating, he blocked the number. No backup plan, no safety net. The moment he did it, something shifted inside him. He felt lighter, stronger. He had just burned the bridge to his old life, and for the first time, he wasn't afraid. But his test wasn't over yet. That night, as he waited for a response from the new job, doubt tried one last time to take over. Hours passed, and still no call. He kept refreshing his email, his confidence flickering. Had he made the wrong choice? Had he risked everything for nothing? Then finally his phone buzzed. An email. He held his breath as he opened it. His eyes scanned the words quickly, his heartbeat hammering in his chest. He read the first line once, twice. His stomach dropped. It wasn't what he expected. Daniel's eyes darted across the screen, his stomach twisting as he read the words again. "We appreciate your time and effort, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate." The world around him seemed to shrink. His breath caught in his throat. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. For a moment, he just sat there, motionless. His mind couldn't process it. After everything, after taking the risk, after leaving his old job behind, he had nothing. He had believed he was stepping into a new life, but now reality hit him like a cold wave. His heart pounded as doubt crept back in, whispering, "You were foolish to think you could change." His fingers hovered over the phone. He could call his old boss, undo everything, beg for his job back. He could go back to safety, pretend none of this had ever happened. But then he saw it, the blocked number still on his screen. He had burned that bridge. There was no going back. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm listening." There was a pause, then the executive exhaled. "We didn't reject you because you weren't good enough. In fact, your idea was the strongest we've seen. But something happened after the meeting." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The executive hesitated. "Someone from your old job called us. They warned us against hiring you. They said you weren't trustworthy, that you had a history of being unreliable." Daniel's blood ran cold. His old boss, the same one who had tried to lure him back. Had he done this out of spite? Had he sabotaged him just to make sure he had no choice but to return? Anger and disbelief crashed over him in waves. He clenched his fist, his mind racing. But before he could say anything, the executive continued, "I don't believe them, Daniel. I don't think that's who you are." But the board got nervous. They didn't want to take a risk. Daniel swallowed hard. His chance had been stolen from him. Not because he wasn't ready, not because he had failed, but because someone had pulled the rug from under him. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "Because," the executive said, "I want to see what you do next." Daniel's heart pounded. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. He had fought too hard to give up now. He didn't know what his next move would be, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going down without a fight. Daniel sat in silence, his mind racing. Betrayal burned in his chest, but beneath it, something stronger was rising. Determination. This was his moment to prove, not just to them, but to himself, that he wasn't the kind of person who backed down. He had spent 3 days rebuilding his mindset, stepping into a new version of himself. Now he had to act like it. He took a deep breath and asked the executive the one question that mattered. "If I can prove that what they said isn't true, would you reconsider?" There was a pause. Then finally, the executive said, "If you can convince me that you're the right person for this job, I'll fight for you. But you have to do it fast." That was all Daniel needed. Relief crashed over him, but before he could even celebrate, the executive continued, "But there's something else you should know." Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. "What is it?" The executive's tone shifted. "Your old boss didn't just try to sabotage you. He's been doing this to others for years. And now, with everything you've uncovered, we have proof." Daniel's mind reeled. He had been so focused on saving himself that he hadn't realized he had exposed something much bigger. "You didn't just fight for yourself, Daniel," the executive continued. "You helped take down someone who had been holding others back for a long time." A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. He had fought for his future, and in doing so, he had unknowingly helped others reclaim theirs. He hung up the phone, feeling something he hadn't in years, complete certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Excitement. He didn't know if he had the job yet, but for the first time in his life, that didn't scare him. He had shown up. He had given his best. And no matter what happened, he knew one thing for sure: he was never going back to the man he was before. But just when he thought things were falling into place, life threw another challenge his way. That evening, he got a call from his old boss, the job he had walked away from, the place that had drained him for years. "We've heard about your interview," his boss said. "Come back. We'll give you a raise." A promotion. Think about it. It was everything he had wanted just a few weeks ago. More money, security, a clear path forward. The easy choice. But deep down, Daniel knew the truth. If he went back, he would be stepping into his old life, the one where he settled for less, where he let fear decide for him. He had a decision to make, one that would change everything. Imagine waking up just 3 days from now and realizing that everything you've been wishing for, success, confidence, happiness is finally within your grasp. Sounds impossible, right? But what if I told you that there's a way to turn your desires into reality faster than you ever imagined? Let me tell you a story. A young man named Daniel had hit rock bottom. He was stuck in a job he hated, drowning in self-doubt, and watching his dreams slip further away every single day. He felt like no matter how hard he tried, something was always holding him back. He scrolled through endless motivational videos, read self-help books, and even tried manifesting, but nothing seemed to work. Until one day, he met someone who changed everything. An old mentor, a man who had transformed his own life from failure to massive success, gave Daniel a simple challenge: give me just 3 days. Follow exactly what I tell you, and you'll see your entire life start to shift. Daniel was skeptical, but with nothing to lose, he agreed. The next 72 hours would be the most intense and life-altering of his existence. He discovered a powerful secret that most people overlook, a hidden force that shapes our reality faster than we think. What he learned didn't require years of hard work, luck, or talent. It was something so simple yet so effective that once he understood it, everything began to change instantly. But what was this secret? And how did it work so fast? By the third day, Daniel stood in front of a mirror and saw someone completely different, someone powerful, unstoppable. His desires were no longer just dreams. They were real. Want to know how? Keep watching.